Hello, all you ghouls and nameless things traversing the hellish depths of the internet. My name is Ryan. I am your librarian. This is the Rybrary. No talking in the Rybrary. Spooky season is upon us. You like that voice? September means two things. Football is starting, and go Bills. And it is spooky season, more importantly, the most wonderful time of the year. If you watch the channel at all, you'll know that I am a huge horror fan. Love it to death. Maybe my favorite genre. Today I have for you six horror books that I would like to see adapted for screen, either as a movie or TV show or whatever. Just, live action adaptation. So when I say horror books, I have actually three full-length novels, two novellas, and one short story for you. So sorry if I was deceptive in in the title or description of this video, but we'll let it slide. I'll let it slide. The first horror book I would like to see adapted very much is Ceremonies by T.E.D. Klein. This is a cosmic horror novel from the 80s. This is the only novel T.E.D. Klein has ever written. He has this and a collection of short novellas called Dark Gods, and that is it. That's all he's ever written. This book is about a grad student slash professor in New York City named Jeremy, who is taking the summer to get out of the city and read some horror books in rural New Jersey. He rents out a room at the farm of a family called the Poroths, a husband and wife family, and they're part of a religious group that is somewhat like the Amish. They shun modern day technology and that kind of thing. Jeremy is also courting a young woman named Carol throughout this, and so Carol is the other kind of protagonist. This is a very slow and very atmospheric book. The horror elements take quite a while to work their way into this story, but it is a folk horror slash cosmic horror book. Because of the slowness and the high level of atmosphere in this book, as I was reading it, I kept thinking repeatedly how good it would work as an A24 movie. If you're not familiar, A24 is the film studio that has put out a lot of the big works of elevated horror over the last decade or so. Works by Robert Eggers, works by Ari Aster, The Witch, Hereditary, Midsummer, those kinds of movies. And this would work so well in the kind of style that they make horror. They tend to make horror movies, and because it's very heavy on atmosphere and also very slow, which I tend to like in a lot of horror movies. It's not, for everyone, but for the kind of audience that appreciates that, myself included, I think this would work really well as that kind of horror movie. The next book that I would like to see adapted as a film or as a TV show is Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Basterica. I reviewed this on the channel a couple months ago. I read it recently and loved it. I have heard that this actually is going to be made into a film or a TV series or whatever. I'm not exactly sure when or in what form that's going to take, but looking forward to that for sure. This is a horror slash dystopian novel about a world in which animal meat has become no longer edible, and so the consumption of human meat has been legalized, so legalized cannibalism. And this kind of explores what the world is like once that industry is kind of set up and established, and all of the ramifications of that. In this book, we get to see, the ins and outs of the human meat industry. We get to see like processing plants. And I think seeing those things on screen and seeing, the rows of humans in stalls waiting to be, killed and consumed by others would really make the horror and the awfulness of this world hit even harder. Another notable thing about this book is the sort of detached way in which it's told, and the matter-of-fact way that, the main character sees the human meat industry. The main character is involved in that industry, so he sort of just is accustomed to it to some degree. And I think that juxtaposition of the horrific stuff going on and his sort of matter-of-fact view of it, really is part of what generates the horror. And I think that will also work really well if it's handled correctly in a visual movie adaptation. The next book that I would love to see as an adaptation on TV or as a movie is, you guessed it, The Troop by Nick Cutter, one of my favorites of the year. This is about a troop of Canadian Boy Scouts, young teenagers who go on a camping trip with their scoutmaster on a small island off the coast of Canada. And they're having a great time until a stranger arrives at the camp and shortly thereafter dies. And it becomes quickly apparent that this man is carrying some kind of contagion. There's a ton of great body horror in this that I think would work so well in a visual medium, particularly if they opted to go with some practical effects. Practical effects are not that common these days, unfortunately. CGI is definitely more of the way that people tend to do tend to do special effects. But all the same, I think it would work so well. There's so much like gooey, gross stuff that would be well represented by actual gooey, gross stuff. There's a lot of horrific scenes in this that when I think about seeing them in a visual format, it would be cool, but it would also be like, oh my god, I would be very, very upset by some of the stuff that happens in this book, particularly because it involves some kids, young teenagers. I also think the fact that this is an epistolary book and that you get newspaper articles and interviews and transcripts and stuff mixed in with the actual story narrative, I think would enable creators of a film to kind of take the same approach and have some of the sort of scenes take place off the island after the events of the book, and kind of referencing what happens in the main narrative. I've talked about this book a ton on the channel. I'm sort of beating a dead horse, I guess, but yeah, I love it, and I think I have heard that there's talks of making this happen as a movie, but I don't really know. Number 4 on my list of horror books that I would like to see adapted for screen is Rest Stop by Nat Cassidy. This is a novella about a musician who is on a road trip to go see his dying grandmother, and he stops at a rest stop in the middle of the night, and he goes to use the bathroom and discovers that he is being kind of trapped in the rest stop by a killer. And this is sort of a locked room thing. A lot of the book takes place in the bathroom. This is unique among other books on this list in that it's sort of comedic in addition to being a horror work. The killer is very scary but very deranged in a way that is funny. This book has this recurring sort of technique that it employs where you are shown something and you think that it's one thing, like usually something you think it's something supernatural, and then you realize thereafter that the main character is just mistaken about what he's seen and that it's something else. Pulling that off in a visual format, I think, would be really entertaining. While I was reading it, I was continuously kind of seeing in my head how a lot of these things would look in a filmed format, and so I think that's the mark of something that lends itself really well to adaptation. Number 5 on this list is the short story. It's not even actually a regular short story. It's a manga short story. I'm not generally a huge fan of manga, but there is a notable exception, and that is Junji Ito, a horror manga artist. I think the term is mangaka, whose work I absolutely adore. He's as an artist and as a writer, just top tier horror. And I first discovered his work through this story that I'm talking about, and that story is called The Enigma at Amigara Fault. This is a cosmic horror story that is so nightmarish to me and so memorable that I just think about it all the time, and I have gone back and reread it so many times because it hits the buttons so perfectly for me about what I is terrifying to me in cosmic horror, and what is fascinating to me in cosmic horror. This is a story about the aftermath of what happens when a fault line in Japan shifts and reveals a stretch of previously buried mountainside. In this mountainside are countless holes in the shape of people. Two hikers arrive at along with the throngs of others who have come to see this incredible occurrence, and it eventually becomes apparent to those there that each hole is for someone, and not just for anyone, but for specific people who start to find their holes and want to enter them. Yeah, you might have seen the memes of this, actually, with the guy clinging to the wall, like pointing at it, being like, "This is my hole." It's kind of funny in that context, but it's so nightmarish to me, and it's got a crazy ending, and has crazy implications about why these holes exist. This might actually have been adapted. A lot of Junji Ito's works have been adapted as anime, but I would like to see a live action adaptation of this. As I said earlier, anime and manga in general aren't my favorite things, and when I've seen Junji Ito adaptations before, they're kind of vary in terms of how well they're executed. So for me, it's something that would hit a lot harder as a live action adaptation. This is a pretty short story, and I think therefore that it would lend itself best to an episode of a TV anthology or something like that. Unlike some other short works that could lend themselves to being expanded and made longer and fleshed out more, I wouldn't like to see that happen here, because the mystery and the deep sense of unknown here is what I really love about it. And I think that trying to over explain stuff in this instance would ruin it. And finally, the last book on my list of horror books that I would like to see adapted into horror movies or TV shows is none other than H.P. Lovecraft himself. And that novella that I'm talking about is At the Mountains of Madness. I'm a huge fan of Lovecraft's, both his actual body of work, in addition to the contributions that he's made to the world of horror and the subgenre that his work sort of helped proliferate. Cosmic horror wasn't invented by H.P. Lovecraft, but he really kind of formalized it, and all the work that has come since then in cosmic horror is sort of in his shadow. It's a similar sort of dynamic with Tolkien, where Tolkien didn't invent fantasy or high fantasy, but he became the focal point of it and kind of formalized it. Lovecraft's work has been adapted many times, though I don't think At the Mountains of Madness ever has. And the existing adaptations of Lovecraft's work vary wildly in terms of quality and in terms of how much they, adhere to the source material. And that's, if you know his work, you'll know that that's very understandable. The nature of what he does is very difficult to adapt in a straightforward way, unlike a lot of other books where you can see there's like a one-to-one between, here's what appears on the page and it would appear exactly that way on screen. He is an example of someone who it doesn't work like that. It's the way he tells stories doesn't lend itself super well to that. And he also, there's certain things that Lovecraft is good at, and there's other things that he just doesn't really care about. One of those things is characters. His characters are generally kind of thin, and I couldn't tell you the names of any of the characters in At the Mountains of Madness, even though it's, arguably my favorite Lovecraft story. And also, he's not as great at, structure beyond, person encounters, otherworldly thing and goes crazy from it. That's, most of his stories tend to take that format. And so, making on-screen adaptations for that requires usually that someone has to do their own spin on it, and that can work and it cannot work sometimes. I will say I have hope for a good adaptation of At the Mountains of Madness. I know that Guillermo del Toro has been in discussions to make an adaptation of that, and also the guy, I can't think of the director's name, but the director who made the Color Out of Space adaptation from a few years ago with Nicolas Cage. I liked that adaptation quite a bit. I've watched it a few times, and that's an example of something that like doesn't strictly adhere to the source material, but it captures the vibe and while also making a really good engaging movie. I would definitely could see that guy making a good adaptation of the story. This story also has like a really cool setting. It's basically about a group of scientists in the Antarctic who discover an ancient city. It's about what they find there, and so I think that with modern special effects technology, this ancient Cyclopean. He loves using that word Cyclopean. This ancient Cyclopean city, I think could look awesome in a modern film. But yeah, with any Lovecraft adaptation, I'm always going to be holding my breath for the reasons that I've already listed. But he's one of my favorites, and I would absolutely love to see it. So there we have it. 6 horror adaptations I would love to see in the near future, hopefully, maybe. Who knows? Thank you so much again for visiting the Rybrary. Let me know in the comments what you have lined up for spooky season, books, movies, whatever. I really appreciate you, and you may now talk.